outset, my gratitude to AIOS, Dr. Namrata Sharma Madam and dear Dr. Rajesh for inviting me for this wonderful series. And it's an honor for me because to present my talk with Dr. DAD Madam, Dr. Dhanashri Madam as a chairperson. It was under her watchful eyes. She's a mentor for me that I learned the art of vitreoretina during my time at Shankar Nethralaya in Chennai. I'm going to present my talk on the intravitreal injection for endophthalmitis simplified. Now, you could compare to the other talks today like CRVO and diabetic macular edema. I'm sure you won't see this particular situation so much common in your day-to-day OPDs, God forbid. But once you see it, then I think every ophthalmologist must know the initial management and how to refer and the intravitreal injection. So what my talk is going to consist of is what is an ideal intravitreal injection, what is the choice of antibiotic for intravitreal injection in endophthalmitis, role of intravitreal corticosteroids, the dosage, dilution, administration of intravitreal injection, how to look for the clinical response and repeat if required. One must keep in mind the drug toxicity, the drug-resistant nature of endophthalmitis, and what are the newer antibiotics. So we'll touch upon each of these aspects in a concise manner. It was way back in 1940s where the role of intravitreal injection for endophthalmitis was established. It was known since then that it helps to achieve the effective concentration of antibiotics in the vitreous cavity very rapidly, as versus just using topical agents. But we have now very well understood that it has to be injected early, prior to irreversible destruction of the retina. That is most useful. So what is an ideal antibiotic for intravitreal injection in endophthalmitis? So it has to be effective against the etiological microorganism. It should be non-toxic to the normal structures, the retina basically. And it should have an optimum half-life within the vitreous to be effective and at the same time to be non-toxic. It should be easily available and cost-effective. So the common choice of antibiotic for intravitreal injections, when we take gram-positive organism in mind, it is usually vancomycin or cefazolin. We prefer vancomycin for gram-positive. For gram-negative organism, it is aminoglycosides and cephalosporins. Aminoglycosides have taken a backseat because of their potential retinal toxicity. So we usually prefer ceftazidime when we are targeting gram-negative organism. One must remember that although this is, vancomycin and ceftazidime are the first line of defense, you may have to choose your antibiotic basically based on three things. That is the culture report that you get from the sample you've taken, the sensitivity pattern that the microbiologist tells you, and also based on clinical response as you go along as the treatment proceeds. The role of intravitreal corticosteroids is important because it helps to control or limit ocular damage. It decreases the inflammation and decreases the cicatrization and reduces the exudation. So it works hand in hand with the antibiotics. The preferred steroid is dexamethasone because it has a short optimum half-life, about 3.5 hours in the vitreous cavity. One must remember that corticosteroids can induce toxicity. They can blunt the immune response if your antibiotic has not been effective and can accelerate the infective process. So in fungal etiology, in fungal endophthalmitis, we avoid giving steroids. In bacterial, we do prefer. No, there is no definitive randomized study to my knowledge, where one has studied the role of intravitreal steroids in endophthalmitis. But there is enough, evidence in literature and in practice-based medicine that steroids help definitely in bacterial endophthalmitis. That is steroids as in intravitreal steroids. So what is the dosage that we use? Dosage of the intravitreal injection. So it is 1 milligram of vancomycin with 2.25 milligrams of ceftazidime and 400 micrograms of dexamethasone. This is the most preferred cocktail that we use as an intravitreal first-line injection for endophthalmitis, for bacterial endophthalmitis. The dilution technique, one must prepare immediately prior to use, and the volume that is injected is 0.1 ml. in 2 syringes. So it's 0.1 ml of vancomycin, and in the other syringe, you can do a cocktail of ceftazidime and dexa again in 0.1 ml. Tuberculin syringe is the one which is preferred because unlike the insulin syringe, the tuberculin syringe has a detachable needle at its end. One must remember that in the hub of the syringe also there is a dead space of about 0.04 to 0.05 ml. So you have to take that into account during dilution. The dilution agent can be a balanced salt solution, normal saline. I usually use sterile water for injection. One must, when you finally prepare the injection, you must keep a little extra. So I usually take about 0.2 because the 0.1 usually goes waste when you're flushing the fresh 30 gauge needle that you will finally mount on your syringe to give the injection. And the volume which is injected is 0.1. So you have a total of 0.1 ml of Vanco, which contains 1 milligram, and a 0.1 ml of a cocktail of ceftazidime and dexamethasone in these concentrations. With 0.2 ml being injected in the vitreous cavity, the intraocular pressure will obviously go up. So you need to do a paracentesis after the injections. And remember, once you prepare the injections, you should give them immediately. It's advisable not to store it or give it at later on. The administration technique is essentially given under topical anesthesia with a via speculum. It can be combined with an aqueous or a vitreous tap, which you are going to send for microbiology. It is usually given by the pars plana route about 3 to 4 millimeters from the limbus. In aphakic patients, you can also use the limbal route. It's usually an OPD procedure, unlike the clean intravitreal injections where we insist on doing it in the operation theater. This can be done in the outpatient rooms also, or it could be given intraoperatively along with vitrectomy if you're doing vitrectomy for endophthalmitis. 30 gauge needle is what I use for giving intravitreal injection. So it is injected in the midvitreous cavity, ideally with the bevel of the needle pointing away from the macula. You don't want the entire bolus to go on the macula. And you inject it slowly, drop by drop. If there is, obviously you're using 2 syringes, so it should be given separately. So once you've given the intravitreal injection, what kind of clinical response you will look for? So the next 24 to 48 hours, you would look for improvement. So improvement in terms of decreased corneal edema, decreased AC reaction, decrease in hypopion. The vitreous exudates will come down. And most important parameter of improvement would be improvement in vision, which the patient will tell you. The need for repeat intravitreal injection may arise after 48 hours if there is no clinical response. Or suppose if your microbiology has given you a report which says that your antibiotic is not working, or if there is a better antibiotic, then you would want to change it. Then you would repeat the intravitreal injection. If, as a rule of thumb, if there is no response with 2 intravitreal injections and the clinical scenario is worsening, then you cannot wait and you have to go for immediate surgery, that is vitrectomy. So this is typically how an endophthalmitis would look. You have your corneal edema, you have exudate in the anterior chamber, hypopion. And this is the kind of response you would look at, the corneal edema coming down, hypopion coming down, the conjunctival injection has come down, lid edema is less. So this response tells you that your intravitreal injection is helping and there is a good clinical response. The other important aspect of intravitreal injection is one must keep in mind drug toxicity. And now there is enough evidence in literature to suggest that aminoglycosides can be toxic to the retina. And therefore one must, and it is dose dependent. So if you're using an aminoglycoside, like let's say amikacin, then, instead of the 400 microgram dose, which was initially prescribed few years back in literature, one has to reduce it, probably use 100 micrograms of amikacin. So it is known that these drugs do cause toxicity like full thickness retinal necrosis or outer retinal necrosis. Macular infarction is known to happen with aminoglycoside. This is a typical picture of a macular infarction following, this is a FFA showing macular infarction following a gentamicin intravitreal injection. So one has to keep in mind the toxicity related to antibiotics as well as even dexamethasone. So dexamethasone up to 400 micrograms is non-toxic, but if you're injecting more than 400 micrograms, it can have toxic effects on the retina. So you have to be very careful when you're preparing or diluting the intravitreal injections. Fungal endophthalmitis, yes, you will be using antifungals for fungal endophthalmitis. Again, antifungals, are highly toxic, and one must make sure that they are given in the appropriate concentration. So in fungal endophthalmitis, till the advent of voriconazole, what we used to prefer was amphotericin. Amphotericin, the concentration was 5 micrograms in 0.1 ml is the dilution and the concentration we would give. The other alternatives to amphotericin B were miconazole and fluconazole. And if there was a doubt, there is a doubt that if it is whether it's a fungal etiology or antibiotic, then you can give a combination of an antifungal like amphotericin with antibiotic like cefazolin. But one must remember that in fungal etiology, you will not give steroids. Steroids are to be withheld. Now with a newer antifungal like voriconazole, which is known to be very potent, we normally use voriconazole nowadays for intravitreal injection in the concentration of 50 micrograms in 0.1 ml. One must remember that this is an important topic here, which I'm touching on, and that is drug-resistant endophthalmitis. Very common, especially with gram-negative or pseudomonas endophthalmitis. And to touch upon this topic, I'm going to use my experience, which made us think about this and use newer antibiotics. This was a scenario which was, I came across way back in 2012, where from a charitable hospital, 8 cases of endophthalmitis in one operation theater were referred to us for further management at JJ Hospital and Hinduja, both places. Some patients came to JJ and others to Hinduja. There were a total of 8 patients, acute endophthalmitis on day 2. And when you looked at it, only you could make out, there's a ring infiltrate, there's like an ulcer there, and it looked like pseudomonas at first and on clinical impression. 5 of these patients underwent vitrectomy. All 8 patients underwent vitrectomy. 3 of them underwent an IOL explant, and we gave the usual vancomycin, ceftazidime, and dexamethasone. Vitreous samples from all of them grew Pseudomonas aeruginosa. All right. In fact, 3 patients on the very next day had to do a revitrectomy and put silicone oil. But we knew that by the second day, I'd realized that everything was going downhill. And when we got the microbiology report, it was alarming because this particular Pseudomonas was resistant to everything that we knew. The only thing it was sensitive to was this colistin. In 2012, I had barely heard of colistin as an antibiotic. So, I consulted the microbiologist in Hinduja and we decided, let's use it. And we used intravitreal colistin since it is very similar in terms of its molecular structure to aminoglycoside. We decided to use 100 micrograms of colistin. We gave it intravitreal, we gave it intravenous also. And, to our surprise, many of these cases, the clinical scenario reversed and we got back. It improved. And we managed to save about 4 eyes, which had better than 660 vision. In fact, here, this picture here is of a SFI, which I did in this patient 6 months later. And 2 eyes, were with less than 660, and 2 eyes we were lost. They went pre-thisical. We published our results in 2004 in IGO. In fact, this was the first published report of colistin in Pseudomonas endophthalmitis. And there have been a lot of reports after this. People have even published use of meropenem and piperacillin and tazobactam in some of the drug-resistant endophthalmitis. So how do these newer antibiotics act? Actually, colistin, I call it the Brahmastra. Some of these drug-resistant microbes, what happens is they develop a cell wall which becomes impermeable to our usual known cocktail of vancomycin and ceftazidime. The colistin acts by weakening this cell wall and increasing the permeability. So in fact, what I do is I combine the colistin with vancomycin and ceftazidime. So in vivo, once the cell wall is weakened, probably all the microbes again start acting synergistically and bring about the desired clinical response. So this is, how these newer antibiotics help in these drug-resistant endophthalmitis cases. So in conclusion, I would like to say that endophthalmitis definitely warrants early recognition and early treatment. And one must remember that intravitreal injection is a must for endophthalmitis. Once you know that there is endophthalmitis, only topical treatment will not achieve the desired result, and you're racing against time. And every ophthalmologist must have a know of how to give the intravitreal injection. Remember, here delay would be more costly than over treatment probably. So one must not delay the treatment, and early referral and management probably to a vitreoretina colleague also is very important. Thank you so much. Thank you.